It was the summer break, and KV, my girlfriend Lisa, and our friends Morris, his girlfriend Rachel, and her sister Mary decided to embark on an adventurous camping trip. We ventured deep into the jungle, our anticipation growing with every step. As the sun began to set, we stumbled upon an abandoned clearing, which seemed perfect for our night under the stars. We set up camp, and as night approached, Morris and I went off into the dense woods to gather firewood. The jungle was unnervingly quiet, save for the occasional rustling of unseen creatures. The air grew cooler, and shadows stretched long and menacing. As we collected wood, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Back at camp, Lisa, Rachel, and Mary were setting up the tent and preparing dinner. The fire crackled warmly, but the dark forest around us seemed to press in closer as night fell. We returned with an armful of wood, and soon a comforting blaze was roaring. After dinner, Lisa excused herself to use the bathroom. She asked Rachel to accompany her, both for company and to navigate the dark, thick jungle. They ventured into the undergrowth together, their figures quickly swallowed by the darkness. Morris and I continued to add wood to the fire, trying to shake the feeling of unease that clung to us. When Lisa and Rachel returned, something was undeniably different. Lisa's expression was vacant and unsettling. Her eyes seemed distant, and her movements were unnervingly deliberate. Rachel was visibly shaken, though she tried to mask it with a forced calm. Lisa sat down by the fire, her gaze fixed on the flickering flames, but her demeanor was noticeably off. We tried to engage her in conversation, but she responded with monosyllabic answers and an eerie, detached tone. We attributed it to exhaustion, hoping it would pass. As the night deepened, the atmosphere around us grew heavier. The jungle's silence was palpable, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Lisa's behavior became increasingly erratic. Her eyes darted around as if tracking something invisible. Her movements were jerky, and her responses to our questions were nonsensical. Panic began to set in when her voice took on a guttural, unnatural tone. She began to speak in a strange, guttural language, her words twisted and harsh. Morris, trying to help, approached her cautiously, his face filled with concern. "Lisa, what's wrong?" "It's okay, we're here to help." But Lisa's response was chilling. Her voice, now deep and resonant like a man's, growled, "What are you doing here?" The words were laced with a sinister edge that sent shivers down Morris's spine. His face turned pale as he stumbled back, clearly terrified by the unnatural transformation. Lisa's strength seemed to surge, and she overpowered Morris with terrifying ease. She threw him against a tree, his body hitting the ground with a harsh thud. Rachel and Mary screamed in horror, clinging to each other as Lisa's behavior grew increasingly violent and unpredictable. Desperate, I tried to calm Lisa, but she was no longer the person I knew. Her eyes, now dark and hollow, stared through me with a malevolent gaze. She smiled widely, an unsettling, twisted grin, and said, "I like Lisa," her voice a mix of Lisa's and something far darker. Realizing that Lisa was possessed by a malevolent entity that desired her, Morris and I quickly overpowered Lisa. We tied her up using ropes we had with us, despite her furious and violent struggles. Meanwhile, Lisa laughed maniacally, her laughter echoing with a sinister undertone. As Lisa's laughter filled the night, the demon's voice, still emerging from Lisa's mouth, declared, "I like Lisa." The words dripped with a dark, twisted affection, sending shivers through us all. Rachel and Mary were paralyzed with fear, and they wanted to leave the jungle immediately. Morris and I decided against it. The jungle, though terrifying, felt safer than wandering through it in the dead of night. We began to pray fervently, invoking Jesus for protection, but Lisa's mocking laughter and the demon's chilling declarations continued to pierce through the night air. We stayed awake throughout the night, our fear palpable. Lisa, tied up by the fire, did not rest, Her eyes remained open, her gaze fixed in a disturbing stare. None of us dared to sleep, knowing that any lapse in vigilance could lead to further disaster. We did our best to keep Rachel and Mary calm, trying to project an air of control despite our own mounting terror. As dawn approached, the oppressive jungle seemed to slowly lighten, though the fear in our hearts was far from fading. As soon as the first light of morning pierced through the trees, we wasted no time. We hurriedly packed up our gear, our movements quick and frantic. The sense of urgency drove us to move faster than we ever had. With everything packed, we raced for our car, every step echoing the fear that had plagued us throughout the night. The jungle's menacing silence was replaced by the sound of our hurried footsteps and the distant calls of early morning wildlife. We reached the car, exhausted but relieved, and quickly drove away from the clearing, leaving the haunted jungle behind us. The harrowing night had left us deeply shaken, but we were grateful to be leaving the nightmare behind. Lisa, though still unconscious, was safe, and we vowed never to return to that forsaken place. If you also have any real horror stories or experiences, you can share them via this email, and don't forget to subscribe us for more creepiness.